Butch. Butch has spent countless hours. I got to know Butch the other day for the first time. Terry recommended him to come to the club and speak, and we all agreed, and I didn't know Butch. I just knew that he was American Digger magazine guy. And he calls me up Tuesday night. This is like at 5 o'clock. It says, we got to do a show at 7 o'clock. Can you do it? And so he let me come on to the American Digger Roundup radio show, or the podcast, and we had a good time with it. We made it work, didn't we?
Yes.
And so it was really good. But Butch has spent countless hours digging historical facts with his metal detector since he was 13 years of age. Today he has decades of detecting. And let me just tell you, sitting across from him this past 2 days, he is a plethora of information. If you haven't had a chance to go talk to him, buy his books. They're right there. They're just great books. Some books are out of print that I think you should have. I bought one today. You have the Albert's Book of Buttons. You know what I'm talking about? You want to buy the companion book. There's one left. And it tells you the dates of the buttons. So it's a good book to get. And there's only one left. So grab it. And but he is just a lot of information. I've been bouncing off of him, different artifacts and stuff like that. As you know, that he is the owner and the publisher of, I think, the greatest metal detecting magazine. The greatest magazine, American Digger magazine. And so he, we can't leave out his wife, Anita. I think, where are you? Yes, he is. They work real hard at this. A lot of our finds have made the magazine in the Just Dug section of the magazine as well. I'm really trying to get Butch. I've been wooing him real hard about taking my script A button and making the front cover look real good, you know. So anyway, we welcome Butch, you and your wife Anita here with us, and we appreciate all you do. And so thank you very much. Come on up here. Y'all give it up for
Did everybody hear me? You don't want me to talk louder, do you? Okay. As far as the script A button, what you don't know is it can get on the cover, but I have to actually on the button. We can't work out a deal, you know? All right, let's get this all fixed up. It's not going to be a full slideshow tonight, but we will have a few little pictures here and there. Okay, I am honored to be invited here to speak to such a distinguished group tonight. I mean, that was an awesome dinner. Barbecue and sausage, it don't get much better than that, you know. I guess y'all didn't know how much I could eat and invited. But that's all water under the bridge now. The pig is eaten and we're done. And, you know, I am humbled to be here, and that is the honest truth. I am truly humbled. And you folks do tremendous things for the hockey, all of y'all. Not just as the TAMDC, but in the individual clubs. And honestly, you should give yourselves a hand right now. You really should. You see, not only do y'all deserve it, but this way, no matter how the talk goes, I can go back and say, yep, there was applause during my talk. My name is Butch Holcombe, of course, and you probably know me as publisher of American Digger magazine, but that's only one of my jobs because, well, first of all, American Digger magazine. Have we got any readers here? Yeah, we got a few. Y'all spread the word. Spread the word. Help the baby eat, please.
Mama needs new pair of shoes.
And it's like Terry says, at least I think it is the greatest metal detecting magazine going. Right. And right now we're one of the few left because unfortunately. What a lot of people don't know is I have other jobs as well. I'm the co-owner of Great Bird Relics. I'm co-host of American Digger's Relic Roundup podcast, which is every Monday night. We've been going for 7 years now. I'm also the show chairman of American Digger events. We put on 2 big shows a year, one in Charleston and one in Chattanooga. And I'm also the CEO of our parent company, which is Great Bird Publishing. We publish a lot of books and things of that nature, as well as the magazine. And all of these have one thing in common, and it's no accident. They all have something to do with metal detecting. The only accident is I didn't really plan on all of them being full-time jobs. words. But they are. But you know what? I love every minute that I work in this home. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't give anything for it. Now, in my spare time, when I do have it, guess what I like to do? I like to go metal detecting. That's right, I'm a digger. I have been for 51 years, and I have no plans to quit anytime soon. You know, I've dug far too many holes to give up on finding a gold coin. Yes, I have not found a gold coin in 51 years. That's my goal. But before we get too far along, I want to tell you about two friends of mine back in my neck of the woods of Georgia. That would be Bubba and his cousin Bubette. Now, let me stop just a second. If your name is Bubba, don't take any offense to this because it's just a name I made up to protect the identity of my friend. But if you've got a cousin named Bubette, or anybody in your family's named Bubette, or your name is Bubette, this might be about you. That's all. So Bubette and his cousin, or Bubba and his cousin Bubette, decided to go metal detecting at one of the big paid hunts for their honeymoon. Everybody catch that? Okay. They were at their honeymoon. And you know how newlywed relatives are. Well, maybe you don't. Anyway, they went to Walmart. They bought matching coveralls, matching jackets, matching boots. All in camouflage, of course, because they didn't want to spook the relics. That's why we wear camouflage, by the way. And being their honeymoon trip, they decided to eat real good on this trip. So they stocked up on pork rinds, potato chips, Slim Jims, Little Debbie cakes, and then they bought some snacks. Now, the only thing they bought that did not match, Bubette bought herself salt-free pork rinds because she was on a health kick. They paid their $300 in hunt fees. They gassed up the truck several times because Bubette can't fly because it gave her the vapors. They booked the honeymoon suite at Motel 6. Now, that is the only room at Motel 6 that did not leave the light on. Thank goodness. They metal detected hard for 3 days. At the end of it all, they had found a single 3-ring mini ball worth about $1.25 plus postage on eBay. So Bubba was kind of good at math, so he ciphered up all the expenses for the trip, whistled through his tooth. He said, "You realize this here Civil War bullet cost us almost $2,000? And poor old Bubette, she was kind of sensitive. She was about to cry. She just shook her head and said, "Oh, Lordy, Lordy, I'm glad we only found one. We couldn't afford to find 2 of them." Now, if you're wondering what I'm going to be talking about tonight, I'll be talking about half an hour. Glad we got that out of the way. Now, during that half hour, though, I'll be talking about my love for the metal detecting hobby and how I turned it into a full-time living. I'll be also giving somewhat questionable metal detecting advice. Little-known hints that are probably little known for a reason. And I'll be telling some anecdotes, or perhaps antidotes if all this makes you nauseous. But we're going to have a good time. And I'll be also answering the questions that I get the most as publisher of American Digger Magazine. For instance, what changes have I seen in the hobby in the last 51 years? What type of detecting do I like the most? How did I start American Digger Magazine? And if we have time at the end, I don't know if we will or not, but I'll take some questions. If not, I'm doing a seminar tomorrow morning, which appropriately is titled Questions and Answers with Butch, so you can actually ask some questions then if you want. We can talk detecting, whatever you guys want to do. But my favorite find is 2 things, if you leave out all the other favorite finds I've found, because I've found a whole lot of favorite finds. bet I'm not the only one like that, too. As far as rarity, it would be this. Now, that was my first Civil War belt buckle. I found it about 6 months after I started metal detecting. You'll notice it's not a regular U.S. buckle like you normally see. This is actually a Georgia militia cartridge box plate. Now, belt buckle, cartridge box plate, I know a lot of y'all know the difference in it. If you don't, in a few minutes, I'll show a slide and explain it to you. But let's talk about how rare it is. Okay, let's talk in terms of coins. A 1909 VDB penny had a circulation of 484,000. Compare that to this box plate here. There was only 1,000 of this style made. And I managed to find it with a metal detector. So, by my somewhat questionable calculations, sorry, it's a little bit hot in here. By my somewhat questionable calculations in fuzzy math, I look at the 484,000 versus the 1,000, and that tells me my box plate is 483,000 times as rare as the rarest regular issues we can pick. That's pretty darn rare, so, I was quite proud of that. Now, the person that owned this, I was actually able to narrow it down by doing some research. They were a member of this regiment right here, which was Georgia Militia Regiment. This was taken right before the war, but they were the Republican Blues was the name that they went by. They were a lot of politicians' sons. They were planters, families, had a lot of money, very well-to-do people that lived in Savannah. And to show you what kind of soldiers they were, yeah, give me my next one there, please, sir. Oh, okay. It's nice to have help. Actually, if I've zoomed in on this picture before, and I didn't do it here, but you can actually see the Georgia State Seal belt buckles on some of them. But that was them. It was one of those guys that lost us. You get that next slide there? I have trouble with technology. Okay, this was the Republican Blues in their dress uniforms. You can see these guys were really ready for battle. Like I say, they were pretty much spoiled rich kids. And thank goodness they did not wear these uniforms into battle, because if they did, the Yankees would have probably wiped them out just because they were dressing so khaki. But anyway, these soldiers, their job during the Civil War was to guard a fort on the Georgia coast where it was very safe. So the first 3 years of the Civil War, they saw no action whatsoever. Their time at the fort was spent grilling, eating oysters, fishing, throwing parties, and ever so often drinking a little too much wine and gesturing rudely at the occasional Yankee ships that were sailing by on the distant horizon. That was as close to the war as they got. But as the song says, somebody must have done somebody wrong. Because in 1864, at the height of the Georgia invasion by General William Tecumseh Flick My Bit Sherman, they were sent to the front lines north of Atlanta to face the Yankees. Now, I'm sure they were quite shocked. I don't know why they got sent there, but probably had something to do with the loud parties and gesturing at the ships going by. But where to use such inexperienced soldiers? These guys had never seen combat before at all. Well, the Confederate command knew just what to do with them. They stationed them about a mile in front of the main Confederate lines. Their job was to warn the Confederates that the Yankees were coming. In other words, they were lookouts. So after just a day or two, here come the Yankees. I mean, lots of Yankees. I mean, a whole lot of Yankees. There were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Yankees, maybe more. There were so many Yankees that they would have caused a black sock and sandal shortage if they had invaded Miami. Fortunately, they didn't invade Miami for quite a while after. Anyway, the Georgia boys, they took their jobs as lookouts very seriously. They just began screaming, "Look out, look out," as they scrambled over each other in their haste to get back to the main lines. And please understand, these boys from my home state, they were not cowards. They had just never seen battle before. And if you see that many Yankees coming at you with guns, you probably run too. That's a scary sight. Let me explain now the difference in a cartridge box plate and a belt buckle. A lot of people use the term interchangeably, but if you go to that next slide. Okay. On the left is a cartridge box. That's what the bullets were in. And this, by the way, this is a U.S. Yankee Federal set of accoutrements because the Georgia equipment is so rare nowadays that I couldn't even find a picture online of it. But to illustrate the difference, okay, you see what looks like a belt buckle on the left and a belt buckle on the right. The one on the left is a cartridge box plate. They look identical from the front. It's when you flip them over that you can tell the difference. Next slide. Okay. This is actually the back of the cartridge box plate I found. It's in perfect condition, which is pretty unusual. But you'll see two wire hooks, or actually loops on either side. Those went through slits in the leather cartridge box, and they would put a leather thong or sometimes a piece of wood behind those to pin them into the cartridge box flap. And by the way, this helped hold the flap down so they wouldn't spill the cartridges out. Now, a belt buckle, however, next picture. Oh, we're getting good at this. Yeah, okay. This is the back of a belt buckle. And you can see on one side it had two studs or sometimes hooks. Those were kind of semi-permanently attached to the belt. The other end, of course, was just a hook that looped into the belt, and that's what they adjusted and put it on. But that is the difference. If anybody ever asked you and you didn't know, now you know the difference. The box plate was found on a steep slope that the Georgia boys ran down in their haste to be good lookouts. And it was found with a shoe heel plate and a few unfired Confederate bullets. Now, I'm happy to say there were no casualties amongst the Georgia boys. They may have outrun the Yankee bullets, I don't know, but none of them fell due to wounds. However, there was a man that fell here, but it was not a bullet to blame. It was, plain and simple, gravity that put him down. He fell on a big rock. And this fighting with gravity, it's a terrible thing. I've been there and the struggle is real. But this fight with gravity was the only real fighting this boy had done since signing up for the war. But the Georgia boys did serve their purpose. They gave the Confederates plenty of time to form and hold off the attack. And in the following days, these green troops served with honor. They were very brave soldiers. But the day the box plate was lost, they were still learning to be soldiers. And I'm sort of glad they were because none of them got hurt, and I got a really nice box plate in the process. So that's the rarest thing I found. Y'all excuse me, I gotta get my water. I would normally have a bottle of water up here with me, but I lost the top of it, so that didn't work out. Okay, my other special find, and I get rather emotional with this. I ask for reverence here because where we're going to be entering some sacred territory, the inner sanctum of soul, because I found the ring of, next slide, James Brown, soul singer James, get down well. Man, get any better. He is the person responsible for such timeless romantic ballads as Hot Pants, Body Heat, and of course everyone's favorite, often sung at weddings and bar mitzvahs. Sexy, sexy, sexy. Yep, the hit maker James Brown. The hardest working man in show business, and I found his ring in Augusta, Georgia. Let me explain a little bit. One of the ghettos in Augusta was being torn down, and what some would consider a lapse of judgment, I went metal detector. Because even bad choices can lead to a good story. But ghetto hunting actually can pay off at Augusta. Because, believe it or not, I have found Confederate buttons behind old crack houses. Because what they did is after the Civil War, rather than landscape and redevelop everything, they just built houses right on top of the camps. So it's really amazing what you can find in some of these ghettos. If you don't find these Civil War relics, though, all is not lost. Because you always get something cool and exciting like stolen weapons, ammunition clips, switchblades, antique razors, gold chains, and sometimes expensive pimp rings. Occasionally with a pimp finger in them, although thank goodness I've never found one. Okay, next slide. All right, here it is, the ring of James Brown. When I first found it, I thought it was a pimp ring, although it was missing the finger. But it was larger and heavier and bigger. In fact, that's actual size. Well, maybe. It weighted my pouch down. But it was larger and heavier than any self-respecting pimp would wear. And it has both yellow and white gold intertwined in it. And those are diamonds in the face, $14. But you know, I guess I should be honest here. It doesn't actually have James Brown's name engraved in it. It doesn't even have his initials. But James was no stranger to the ghetto. And I figured that anything that gaudy and valuable in a ghetto would have to be worn by either James Brown or, next slide, the king of rock and roll himself, Mr. Elvis Presley. Now, Elvis did sing the song in the ghetto, but he never spent a lot of time in Augusta. But incidentally, a sheriff's badge was found only a few feet away. Next slide. Now, I actually have the county blurred out on that because I posted on Facebook right after I found it. I didn't want anybody to know where I got it from. But there's a story here. When you find a ring like that and a sheriff's badge within a few feet of each other at an old ghetto crack house, there's got to be a story involved. We wouldn't know what it was except I've made it up. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I figured maybe James had a police escort when he visited here because it was a really rough neighborhood with the straight razors and all that. But then again, think about this. Elvis collected police badges. So whose ring is it? Well, you decide. Next slide. Here's a picture, a close-up of Elvis's ring. Next slide. That's fuzzy. That was during his fuzzy days. Okay, there's the ring that I found. And next slide, here is a close-up of James Brown's ring. So you decide. But no matter who actually owned the ring, I can say this, it's one hunk of heavy gold and it's sexy, sexy, sexy. I can't out as good as James, but you know how it is. Okay, let's talk about the changes that I've seen in this hobby over the last 51 years. Technology and metal detecting is one real big thing. For instance, my first metal detector, go to the next slide. Might have to blow that up. Okay, well, actually, oops, that's the next one. First. Okay, that was my first detector before batteries were invented. There we go. Okay, you can move on to the next one now. I outgrew that detector. Okay, my first detector was a Heathkit metal locator. Now, it was a metal detector you had to put together with a kit, by a kit, and it was really well built. Notice that it has a chrome steel rod made of metal that screws directly into the search core. I sort of think that affected the depth a little bit. When you're talking about Heathkits, you weren't really talking about depth a whole lot. And that detector, though, I will say this, it never did break. Never did work properly either. But nowadays, think how far we've come. Nowadays, you can buy a detector that's already put together and has a plastic rod going to the search core. Automatically, that's going to give you a few extra inches of depth. So we have come a long, long ways. Other advances of the last 51 years, that's actually all the slides. Oh,
No, I don't.
oh, you don't, that's right. If we had more slides, they'd have to charge more for this bank. You're paying by the slide, just so you know. Okay, another thing that has really impressed me with metal detectors is digital readouts. I remember the first detector that I ever had with a meter, which was actually the Heathkit. The Heathkit did have a meter on it. It was a FFD, far from digital. It had a needle, and if the needle moved, it meant there was probably metal that was touching the search core. And if the needle moved a lot, if it went all the way up to 10, it was a big piece of metal touching the core. But nowadays, many of the detectors actually have LED readouts. They tell you exactly the information you need for certain metals of a certain type, size, or creed. It tells you how deep the metal is. It tells you what the remaining battery power is. It even tells you on many of them how confident it is in its predictions. Ironically, that means that even good metal detectors sometimes doubt themselves. So don't feel bad when you're wondering if your detector's working right. The only thing the digital readout cannot tell you that I figured out is how to cut out the sun's glare on a sunny day when it cuts out the LED and you can't see what it's saying. I'm sorry, I usually don't sweat much for a big guy. Oh. I crack myself up sometimes, so feel free to laugh at me. It's okay. Now, some detectors nowadays also allow you to program. I've got an XP data that allows me to program it. That proves that half of us are engineering geniuses. The other half should not even be allowed to use it to do remote control. I'm in the latter group. My wife has hid the remote control, and I've still got a VCR from 1988 that bleeps when I plug it in. So, you know, the Deus might not be for me, but I love it. And I did try to create some programs on it. In fact, I created 3 nameless programs, because I don't know how to name them. And they will effectively knock out anything that even resembles a good target. Now, I did try to get rid of these programs recently, and instead of getting rid of the accidentally programmed nameless programs, I accidentally created another nameless program. And it does absolutely nothing as far as I can tell. Now, one of those programs, it will actually even pick up dirt while ignoring me. So, you know, that's pretty hard. Another thing that has changed is research. Before the internet, I did all my research using old books, maps, certain precision drafting tools like a pair of rusty dividers and a ruler, and mass quantities of strong coffee. It also makes a good antiseptic if you stab yourself with rusty dividers. But nowadays, all it takes is the internet and a six-pack of Red Bull. You can save where it used to take dozens of hours to pinpoint a good site for you and your buddy to go metal detecting at, you can now get that same information in just a few minutes and drive to a secluded remote location where you'll meet a dozen other metal detectors who have discovered the same information and grow faster than you did. Thank you, Internet. So what is my favorite type of detector? Well, since I own numerous metal detectors, I mainly like to detect metal. Thank goodness I never owned a mine detector. But I do like finding the old military items, especially Civil War relics. I also like to hunt cellar holes and old house sites. And in hot weather, I love hitting the beaches, looking for jewelry, which is even more enjoyable if the owner isn't still wearing it. A lot more fun that way. I also love finding old coins no matter where they're at. And I will not comment on the rumor that I was erroneously reported as a stalker in the Coinstar machine group. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Plus, I like bottles, arrowheads, old nuggets, meteorites, fossils. I like anything like that. And that's where American Digger magazine came from. Seems that American Digger reflects my own personal collecting interest, and a lot of other people must like the same things I do. We've got a lot of readers now. So what everybody wants to know is, how did American Digger magazine start? Well, let me tell you. I love metal detecting, and I wanted to make a living somehow with it, but I didn't like selling my finds, plus the fact I couldn't make much of a living that way. For the last 30 years, I've run and operated Greybird Relics. You can find us online, graybirdrelics.com. And at Greybird Relics, I buy and sell artifacts and relics found by other people. But it wasn't enough to make a living on, or so my first two wives claimed. It was clear I would have to supplement my income or quit getting married. Now I tell you though, I love being married because I love the romance. I love holding hands at sunset. I love morning kisses. I love sleeping indoors. I love 3 meals a day. I love marriage. So it became clear I'd have to supplement that income. Now, on a related note, I have been a freelance writer for several treasure magazines, and one day I decided to visit one of their offices. The similarities just blew me away. I couldn't believe it. They had a computer, and I had a computer. They like coffee, and I like coffee. Oh, there's more. Their publisher owned a dog, and I owned a dog. And their editor and me both loved metal detecting. So the die was cast. I mean, it was obvious I had to start a magazine. I had all the tools. The only thing I didn't have was any experience whatsoever with magazines other than freelance writing. Now, being too dumb to know that we couldn't do it. Now, let me stop a second. Notice I said we. That's another advantage of marriage, is you can share the blame with somebody. So being too dumb to know we couldn't do it without any experience, I told my wife Anita that we could do it, and we decided to start a magazine. It was that simple. This is true. To do this, since we didn't have experience, we bought a book called How to Start a Magazine. I swear we did. That's how we started the first magazine. How to Start a Magazine. And, you know, I did have to kind of read between the lines there because it did say how to start a treasure magazine. But anyway, we read that book and we got a lot of the information out of it. And then I became the graphics artist of American Figure Magazine by default. Because we actually had a real graphics person to begin with. But about 3 or 4 months before launch day, he found a better career cooking at the Waffle House. It was probably a good career move, so it was all left up to me. Now, the last experience I had with any kind of graphics was in the 9th grade when I flunked my art class because I colored outside the lines. So I wasn't real good at this. So does anybody remember the Dummies books? Okay, good. I went out and I bought a Photoshop for Dummies. I bought Adobe for Dummies, and then I got a Dummies for Dummies book. And between all 3 of those books, I learned enough graphics to publish the first issue of Dummies. That's probably why the first issue is so valuable. It goes for about $40. Because nobody can believe graphics like that have ever gotten published. I did color within the lines, though. And what's amazing is I still do the graphics, and I don't look at the Dummies books near as much. Fast forward 15 years, because that's how long we've been in business, and we are bigger than ever. Well, at least I'm bigger than ever. Thanks to the support of people like you, darn good barbecue. But it all began because of my love of metal detecting, and that is true. I love metal detecting. I love metal detecting better than sleeping or eating. It brings me joy. One of the joys of metal detecting, other than finding cool stuff and being with the people you like, is seeing the wildlife. Can anything be more beautiful than seeing wildlife? Understand, though, seeing the wildlife is much different than interacting with wildlife. Interacting with the wildlife can get a little crazy sometimes. Let me explain. Those who think all wildlife is glorious and beautiful and should be interacted with have never been face to face with a charging armadillo, but I have. They are ugly person. But it's not just God's greater creatures you should watch out for, because dynamite comes in small packages. Nobody can light it like a metal detector. I can attest that the only thing faster than a detector is running from angry bees is the angry bees chasing after the metal detectors. And I can tell you this too, I don't care how fast you run, there's always going to be at least one bee that's faster than you are. And I can also confirm that it is impossible to dig faster than fire ants can bite. When Terry told me last night there was going to be fire ants in that field, I almost didn't go. I tried this theory earlier this year, trying to dig faster than fire ants can bite, at a location in South Carolina, because there could be an 1850s dial, 2 Confederate buttons, a Yankee Eagle button, and several mini balls, all dug within about 100-foot radius by my friends. Since I was right outside of that radius, I didn't find squat. And so, you know, I decided to do what I had to do. I can't fish my way into the middle of the other diggers and started bottom feeding with no pride. And this has resulted in several angry looks by my friends, a wheat penny, and a mystery signal. Let me explain about the mystery signal. I heard a good tone. I took a knee, and I began to dig in the sandy, loose soil with my hand digger. Now, ironically, I saw some large carpenter ants that were nearby. Now, carpenter ants they eat wood, and they're pretty harmless unless you have a wooden leg. So I just ignored them. But here is a good, important life lesson. Please hear me on this. Never, ever ignore ants. Ants will get your attention one way or another. Because a few seconds later, I felt my left arm start to tingle. Well, actually, tingle is not the right word to use. It was more of a horrible, burning, painful, biting sensation. It was very similar to the time at Benihana's when I tried to catch a shrimp in my mouth. I slipped and put my arm on the grill. I mean, it was rough, man. It was rough. They won't let me into Benihana. I looked down and my lower arm was turning black with fire ants. So, you know, the fire ants are proof that big things come in little packages. Does everybody here know what fire ants are?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, oh, yes. There's one or two that are looking kind of puzzled, but has anybody ever had a close-up experience with fire ants? Bless your heart and all you vital organs. They hurt, don't they? Well, if you're unfamiliar with fire ants, let me explain it as simply as I know how. If there was ever a bug that needed Jesus, it is fire ants. They are hateful little critters. Imagine tiny, stinging, angry demons that bite with bad attitudes on little bitty legs that move at tremendous speeds. The carpenter ants, it turned out, were just a distraction to allow the fire ants time to get to it. So I jumped back. That may be another James Brown song. But I jumped back. I'm not going to do another ow. I jumped back. I brushed them off of me, and then I figured, well, I've already been bit. How much worse can it get? This, my friends, is what I call digger logic. We all have a little bit of digger logic in it. Here's one example of digger logic. You look at the weather report. It says there's a 99% chance of heavy thunderstorms all day, but you go metal detecting 3 hours away anyway because you figure there's a 1% chance it'll be dry enough to be. That's digger logic. Yep, y'all have all been there. I have. So I took a deep breath, got a stiff upper lip, made sure all the ants were off of me, and I ran back over to the nest. I scooped and dug and flung dirt in the air trying to get the target, which was not very popular with my friends because obviously they were dodging flying fire ants. And then I would retreat several feet away to safety to brush the latest cord off my legs and arms. I did this over and over and over, which I think's the definition of insanity. But anyway, I did it over and over, and finally, I decided that signal didn't really sound that good. And I'd already been bit 93 times, and I was pretty sure it wasn't worth 94 bites. So that signal is still out there. I'll show you where it is if you allow me to videotape it. Incidentally, there was one of the guys there that was Native American. I think he was on 1/10% Cherokee. And he gave me my honorary Indian Bible, which is, I'm proud of it, Dances with Ants. I would like to leave y'all with some advice tonight for safe and fun meditation, because doggone it, that's what it's all about. Yes, fire ants may be mentioned once or twice here, but this is important information. Fire ants and yellow jackets are always plural. There is no singular. If in doubt, dig it out. If you get bit, run like, well, just run fast. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this. You think it can't get any worse than that, but, well, leaves of 3, let them be. Leaves of 4, use some more. Oh my goodness. I apologize, y'all. I had to say something funny. If you and your buddy encounter a bear, you do not have to outrun the bear. You only have to outrun the bear. When you reach into a hole, just remember this. Tree roots do not wiggle and hiss when you grab them. Maybe this one only applies to me, but according to experienced coin collectors, there are only 2 grades of coins that I have ever dug up. That's worser and much worser. Always obey the metal detector laws. Not only is it the right thing to do, whether you agree with them or not, always obey them. Because they won't let you have hobbies in prison that involve people. And probably the most important thing I've got to say here tonight, the fine of a lifetime will always be 3 feet beyond where you stop. Yeah, that's true. So whether it be in detecting or in life, if you want to find the real treasure, always go the extra yard. So that's it. Thank y'all. God bless you. Keep your coil to the soil. If we have time, I'll answer some questions. Other than, have I ever had a real job? Any questions?